And it's in Star Trek The Next Generation that we learn all about the weird and wonderful things it can do. In today's live stream, we're breaking down 6 times when Starfleet officers discovered that true love was only a program away. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things Star Trek. And today we are going to be looking at 6 different episodes where members of the Starfleet crews have fallen in love with holograms. As always, there are timestamps below, so if you are watching on the replay, feel free to jump ahead at any time. But if you are watching live, I want to say hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me on Thanksgiving Eve here in the United States at the time of this recording. So one of the things that I think is really interesting about this whole idea of creating love on the holodeck is why wouldn't people use this technology for that? Now, of course, and we're going to see in some of our examples, there can be really cringy things you do with the holodeck. And you can kind of, overstep boundaries and just be weird. But also, I think there's harmless things you can do with the holodecks as well. Just creating companions, whether it's friends or romantic partners or whatever. It just makes sense that people would use technology in this way. And in fact, at the time of this recording, we're already there, people. There are apps that exist on the market right now where you can get an AI girlfriend or boyfriend or they friend who presumably will tell you whatever you want to hear and make you feel really good about yourself and be someone you can at least chat to back and forth. And I feel like the holodeck is just the next level of that, because now instead of just chatting, you can actually see them and touch them and go on dates with them and whatever else people do in the holodeck with them. But on that note, let's start with the first episode. We're going to start with the kind of cringiest, kind of my least favorite of this genre of I'm in love with a hologram. And then we're going to end with some of my favorite episodes where someone falls in love with a hologram. So let's go ahead and get started with our first episode. Season 3, Episode 21, Holo Pursuits. Lieutenant Barclay uses the holodeck to escape his social anxieties by creating exaggerated versions of his crewmates. Enjoyment turns to addiction, and he starts missing duty shifts while staying in Fantasyland. Luckily, a ship-wide emergency, along with Geordi's mentorship, pull him back into the real world. He decides to delete most of his programs and start making organic friends IRL. So, of course, we're going to start with Holo Pursuits. Like, of course we are. Because this is where we first learn that boundaries need to be put in place for the holodeck technology, okay? This is where we learn this. So that rule that should exist in every ship after this point came specifically from the actions of Lieutenant Reginald Barclay. So basically, he is an introvert and really socially awkward, fair, like some of us are introverts who may be socially awkward at times, totally fair. But instead of getting social skills or learning how to talk to people or trying to learn how to have more confidence if that's what he really wants, etc., instead of doing that, he just kind of hides in the holodeck and he creates all these elaborate programs where he can be a hero, where he can be brave, or where he can be charming, or where he can be sexy, or where he can be strong. And then everybody who makes him feel small in his daily life or unattractive or unwanted or whatever, or invisible, he rewrites their personalities so they can be exactly who he wants them to be in their fantasies. So for people like Riker, who he finds extremely intimidating, he makes him very small and has like a little squeaky voice and really easy to beat up. And for someone like Counselor Troy or Dr. Crusher, who he finds very beautiful, he makes them like sex kittens who want nothing in the world but to give him pleasure or something like that. So having these kinds of fantasies is totally a thing that people have, but creating it at work, like at any place, is just like, that is where the line has been crossed, in my opinion. Like, why is this even possible? And then probably, like, to add insult to injury, he plays in these holodeck programs where he's having relations with his coworkers, whether that be he's hooking up with them or beating them up or, sword fighting them to death, whatever, making Wesley eat pie, whatever he's doing. He's doing this during work, like during his shifts, like when he should be at work. So Geordi is like, Reginald, where are you? Reg, where are you? Where are you? And he's like, oh, right. Yes. Warp core. Right. That whole thing. Sorry. I got caught up in the pie and the swords and sorry, here I come. So it's like, he's so addicted to this fantasy that he can't even function anymore. He can't even just show up to work and do his job. And so that makes it worse, right? Because then when he finally comes to work and he's late and all this other stuff, he's stammering through why he's late, right? Because Geordi's like, where were you? What's going on? We have work to do. And he's like, because what's he going to really say, right? So it's just making everything worse. They walk in on his holodeck program because I guess the third strike for Reginald Barclay is locks. You know, he didn't lock the door. Just didn't lock the holodeck. So they come in and they see what he's up to. And at first Troy is like, you know what, this is healthy expressions of whatever the F. And then when she sees her own self and Riker's like, this is healthy expressions of whatever the F, then she's like, okay, this is a problem. Let's go ahead and pull him into my office and let's have a chat about this. And, you know, and also to Geordi's credit, he also had a conversation with him and was like, hey, holo addiction's a real thing. Like, yes, all the stuff that Troy said about desires, emotions, your ego, whatever, all the psychological things are true, but also this addiction is legit. Like, this is a real thing and you actually need help to break free from just like relying on this for your emotional support. So at the end of the episode, he goes, computer delete program. So to like delete all these fantasies, and then he goes pause except for program 117 or something like that. There's one he like keeps, and I think it's supposed to be like a funny moment in the episode, but it always just like makes my stomach turn. I'm just like, I don't know what that program is, but I have a feeling Counselor Troy's in it. You know what I mean? And if I were Troy, or if I was anybody on this ship, I would not want to be in anybody's holographic fantasies. Just create other people. Like anybody, literally anyone else. Just don't create people who are on the ship. At the very least. I also think of that episode of Deep Space Nine where something similar happens and somebody really wants a holodeck program of Kira, and they're paying Quark like a ton of money to make a special program just of Kira, just so they can have sex with Kira because Kira doesn't want to date them. And he's like, I'll pay you all this money, just get her specs and like put her in the holodeck program and all this stuff. It's just creepy. It's creepy. It's weird. And I also feel like if people had this technology, they would absolutely put celebrities in these holographic fantasies. And I don't think that's cool either. Like, celebrities are also people, and granted they're in the public eye, so they have a lot less privacy than civilians. But again, if I was a celebrity, I wouldn't want my body being used in somebody's creepy fantasy for anything, for any reason. So like, it could generate so many people that don't even exist, just like AI people that you can interact with. There's no reason to sexually harass your crew members or like fight them or beat them up in 10 forward or whatever. That's my 2 cents. This is my least favorite episode on the list, but I feel like an episode about being in love with a hologram would not be complete if this did not make the list. So I'm going to take a second, check the chat, and then we're going to hit the second episode on the list. Hello, everybody who's coming live. So great to see all the stuff in the chat. PS2 Chipper, I hope you enjoy China. What time is it there? Because I feel like maybe you should be asleep. I don't know. What time is it for you? Hello. Yes. Oh, yeah. If you are a member of the Away Team, which is the channel membership, drop a : Moopsie : in the chat. That is today's little thing because it's something cute that takes away from some of the cringe. Yeah, Scott says, I love me some broccoli. PS2 Chipper says, back in the day, my friend was addicted to World of Warcraft. It's a legitimate thing. Like, it is a legitimate thing. And it's so important to get help. Like, even though it may sound like, how could you be addicted to that? You could kind of be addicted to anything if it's serving your needs, if it's filling whatever void you feel like is missing. But because it's not real, at some point you need to be pried away from that so that you can actually experience the world you live in. Creepy first appearance of Jeffrey Combs. Yes, whatever that episode was, it was creepy and awful. Meridian, the subplot was so much better than the main plot. Is that the name of the episode, Meridian? Or was that the name of that character? Whatever it was creepy. Look at the little Moopsie. It doesn't help that Rick Berman was very misogynistic in real life. Yeah, and not just Rick Berman, like, also, I mean, if you watch shows from any time period, you're going to see just like racism, sexism, a bunch of stuff that's like no longer acceptable currently, but was all the rage at the time. And I feel like this episode could have been worse, right? At least in this case, I was going to say Troy wasn't being assaulted, but sort of was. But at least in this case, it was clear that this was a fantasy that Barclay has, and he is using holographic representations. It's not the actual crew members. So there's a little bit of distance there. There's also kind of like we know he's socially awkward, and this is his way to try to connect. Like, there were some mitigating factors where it wasn't like that episode with Jev, where he just like straight up assaulted Troy, and you're just like, okay, here's another episode where, you know, women are just being used like things, like objects. So it had some more layers to women being used as things and objects. Moopsie, even though one killed me once. Look at how cute the Moopsie is. I think he just went until he got burned out of the game. It was just a few years, but his life revolved around it. Yeah. Oh, it's 10 a.m. Oh, it's not too bad. That's not too bad. Yeah, so luckily for your friend, apparently they just like played until they could no longer play and the addiction was gone, which is really good. And they didn't have to do any like drastic measures. Yeah, Nadia says Jev needs to go to Hades. So glad he got the Worf B slap. I was so like, I was glad that they caught him in the end, but also kind of like, and I mentioned this when we had the whole best episodes of Counselor Troy. I just feel like there was not enough justice for Jev, even though they were like, oh, the punishment he's going to face is going to be so severe. Well, I need details. I want to know exactly what he's facing. Give me all the details. Like, I want to know that, what is he going to have to do? Because Troy was not the only one. She was one in a long string. She was just the one where he got caught. And yeah, so that's enough of that. Let's move on to episode number 2 on the list. Season 1, episode 15. 11001001. Riker is enchanted by Minuet, a holographic woman created by the Binars who are upgrading the Enterprise's computer. Little does he know that she's a clever distraction meant to keep him occupied while they hijack the Enterprise to save their own world. After the truth is revealed and their planet is saved, Minuet tragically disappears forever. So this is the second cringiest one on the list. But again, a conversation about being in love with a hologram would not be complete without this episode. So in this episode, the real standout about this episode are the Binars. So cool, so interesting. We only see them in this episode. We never hear about them again until Lower Decks season 4, which, by the way, is my absolute favorite season of Lower Decks. Season 4 is my absolute favorite. It's about the Lower Decks crew of like all the ships, including the Lower Decks crew of the Binars. So super fun. But until we get Lower Decks, we never see these people again, and they're so interesting. They all interact with each other in groups of 2. Maybe we do get them again, because where did we get Trinars from, where there's a group of 3? Was that Lower Decks or was that something else? I don't know. Scott, you probably know the answer to this question. Anyways, such an interesting alien species, and basically they needed to hijack the Enterprise because they needed, I think they needed to upload or back up their world's computer or something like that, or all the Binars were going to die. Forget the whole details about the technology, but that's what they needed the Enterprise for. And they could have just asked Captain Picard if he was willing to help them and their people, but they were afraid he might say no and their people would die without this intervention. So instead, they snatched the ship, they kidnapped whoever was still on the ship, they took them over to their home planet, they uploaded the computer, whatever. Everyone was saved, the day is saved. Now, where the holodeck part comes in is that the Binars were trying to, they were doing some upgrades to the Enterprise, so they needed to be on the bridge by themselves, and they were trying to keep Picard and Riker occupied so that they didn't know what was going on. Now, unfortunately for them, Wesley was there, and he like always knows what's up, but they didn't know that. So they were trying to keep them occupied, and so somehow they knew that if they made a really sexy hologram, Riker would not be able to walk away. So that was really effective, and he invited Picard to join him in I don't remember the name of the bar that they were in. I don't know if they said the name of the bar that they were in the holodeck, but whatever that place was, Riker was like, I met this girl, she's amazing. Captain, you've got to come and join me to see how great this bar is. So it's really weird. Riker's sitting there and she's just kind of like draped over his arm and they're just like making out and stuff. And Picard's sitting there like, cool. It's awkward. It's cringy. It's weird. But I guess the big idea is that Riker really had feelings for Minuet, which is the name of the holographic woman that the Binars created. And he was like, she seems like so much more than just a regular hologram. She's got personality and opinions and thoughts, but really I just want to screw her. So does she need those things? I don't know. But that's what he was saying. Like, she seems so much more complicated and so much more advanced than a regular hologram. And he asked this question, like, what all can the holograms do exactly? And I forget who he asked this to and what the response was, but I'm sure you can do whatever you want in a holodeck. And so he was just so taken in by this woman. In the end, the Binars planet is saved and they're all saved and they come clean, and Picard is like, all right, like, I'm kind of mad, but I'm kind of not mad because I'm glad you guys didn't die, but like, don't do that again, you know. And then Riker's like, okay, well, now that the day is saved, let me get back to the holodeck because Minuet is waiting. And then when he walks in, there still is a character named Minuet, but when she turns her head, it's a totally different, I was gonna say actress, character, hologram. It's a totally different hologram. Same outfit, same haircut, but it's a different hologram, a different face. And then he's so disappointed because he realizes that Minuet was a construct of the Binars and that program has been transferred back to Binar land or wherever, and it's no longer in the Enterprise computers. So Minuet is gone. And it's sad too, because like, he didn't just have lustful feelings, apparently he also loved her charming personality and wanted to really get to know her better. This is me being extremely generous. But the only reason I'm adding in this extra stuff of like, maybe he wanted more than just to screw her is because we see her again in Future Imperfect. In that episode, Riker wakes up and he's like 30 years in the future and he's the captain of the Enterprise. And I think Picard had died somehow, but he has amnesia, doesn't remember anything. And he has a son, and his son is named Jean-Luc. And in the process of getting to know his son, he either looks at a picture or does a home film or something where he sees what his wife, who's also died, used to look like. And he goes, that's Minuet. And that's how he goes, wait a minute, all this is fake, because Minuet, although she's like prevalent in my mind and my memories, was not a real person. So this whole scenario has to be fake. And that's how everything gets unraveled. So that's the only reason I'm being extremely generous with his deep emotional connection with Minuet, is because years later, whenever Future Imperfect came out, I think it was season 4 or 5, and this episode was season 1. I think it was season 1. Whatever, just said in that little video. It makes me think like, okay, she did hold a special place in his heart for a really long time. So I don't know. Let's see what you guys think in the chat. Yeah. So Nadia kind of said it perfectly. Great episode. I hated the Minuet thing, but I love the excitement of the hijacking as well as the way that Data took charge. Gavin, you're so ridiculous. Scott says, Min disappears until some holographic Romulans bring her back. Exactly. Some holographic Romulans who weren't actually there either. Shouldn't they be called non-binars? Shouldn't whom be called non-binars? The Trinars? It's always the Enterprise getting stolen or taken over. I know, right? Nadia says, yeah, it's so weird how Picard just sits there while Riker and Minuet are all over each other. I would have noped right out of there. Awkward. It's so weird. Like, the scene is weird. And don't get me wrong, like, they play it well. They act it well. Picard doesn't act awkward in the scene, because that's not what he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be impressed, enthralled, having a good time. I don't know what emotion he's supposed to have, but whatever it is, it's an emotion I would not have in that scenario. So when you see it, it's like Minuet and Riker are like making out all heavy, and Picard's like looking around, kind of like, oh, okay, this is nice. This is a nice program. So he's feeling some kind of emotions that I would not be feeling in that situation. I'd be like, why did you invite me to this, Riker? What is this? You invited me here to watch you make out with a hologram? Like, I don't need to be here for that. So yeah, I agree. It was weird. Gavin says, weird that Riker wanted a double date with Picard, a really hot woman, and a can of Cheese Whiz. Nadia says, Minuet probably pulled a Data and said, I'm fully functional. I think the dress implied it, which was a super cute dress, by the way. Justin says, what a knockout like you doing in a computer generated. Yeah, what's a knockout like you doing in a computer generated gin joint like this? Exactly. That old chestnut, that line that works every time. Mr. Captain says, imagine the awkwardness if Picard actually brought Troy along. You know what's so weird about Troy and Riker? So Nadia and I have had a bunch of conversations about the Troy and Riker friendship, what like a situationship, right? Like, are they friends? Are they lovers? Are they friends who sometimes hook up? Are they lovers who sometimes act like they're friends? I don't know. Now, from the first episode, from the pilot episode, the whole thing is they're just friends now. They used to have a thing. They don't have a thing anymore. They're just keeping it professional. But they do kiss on the mouth sometimes. They do seem to go on dates sometimes, like romantic dates, like the two of them hand in hand, like walking through the lilies or whatever. Not like just hanging out in 10 Forward, because I wouldn't count that for the two of them. They could just be doing their like duty roster reports in 10 Forward. But I mean like dates. So I don't know. But whenever one of them gets together, well, not whenever, but oftentimes with one of them gets with somebody else, the other one is just like, good for you. Now, sometimes one of them is jealous of the other one. That happens. But other times, most of the times, they're just like, good for you. So glad you're with somebody. And then the next scene, they're like making out. And then the next scene, they're like, oh, you're with somebody else. Cool. So I feel like if Picard had brought Troy, it actually wouldn't have been awkward. I feel like it would have been less awkward because Troy would have been like, okay, good for you. Like, she would have been like, maybe she would have said, Riker, do you think it's unusual that you're so drawn to a hologram? Maybe she would have done some psychoanalysis, or maybe she too would have been like, cool joint. Like, yeah, this place is great. Let's see who else. Let's see if I can find a hot bartender to make out with. I don't know. That's just thoughts. Okay, Scott says, Romulans, we pulled a memory of a woman you loved out of your head. Riker, she was a hologram. Romulans, what? Riker, like, you know how that goes. Yeah, you can't remember the Trinars? I know for sure they were in lower decks, but I feel like maybe they came out before. I don't know. They wouldn't have gotten... Yes, I love this, Randall. They would have gotten away with it, too, if it weren't for those pesky kids and their meddling dog. It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. That's the song that Minuet is going to be singing to Riker, right? Like, it's not unusual to be loved by anyone. I mean, Riker's a dreamboat, so good for her. Okay, let's talk about the third episode on the list. Season 3, Episode 6, Booby Trap. While investigating an ancient battle site, the Enterprise is caught in an energy-draining trap. Geordi works with a holographic simulation of Dr. Leah Brahms to devise an escape plan, and he also falls in love with her. Together, they find a way to escape before the ship's power is completely drained, and Geordi bids a fond farewell to his beloved hologram. So again, a pretty cringy episode as far as the, like, hooking up with a holographic version of Leah Brahms part. But this episode has 2 layers. The A plot is Geordi can't get a girl. Starts out with him in the holodeck with a girl who works on the ship or lives on the ship, drinking Coca No-Nos, which to me sound delicious. And he's just like striking out. Then it ends with him kissing this hologram. So the A plot is definitely Geordi's love life. The B plot, which is super important, is that the Enterprise has gotten stuck in this asteroid belt, which is full of kind of like a minefield, like a reverse minefield. So there's these remnants of this old war that took place hundreds of years ago. And one of the aliens who were in the war laced this particular asteroid field with, instead of mines that explode, they're like, I don't even know if they laced it or if these were naturally occurring inside of the asteroids, but basically it would destroy warp capability. So it would strand the ships and just drain their power. And then the ships would just like die, right? All the power would drain and then everybody would die. Like they would suffocate to death, they would freeze to death, all these things. So it starts out with them coming upon this old ship, this like hundreds-year-old ship, and it's just like adrift. And they're like, what's this? Let's go inside. Because sure, that's what we do in Starfleet. So they go into the ghost ship and there's no bodies. So that's lucky. And they're kind of like looking around like, what's going on? There's still some power here, but like for whatever reason, it's adrift. And then they listen to the captain's last message and it's like, we can't escape. We can't get out. Help us or whatever. And of course they cannot send any messages out or anything because all of that's a big dampening field. So they're like, that's weird. Okay, well, now we know that. Let's go back to our ship. And they get back to the Enterprise and they're like, oh no, the same thing's happening to us that happened to that ship. We also can't move. And the more energy we use, the more energy we drain and we can't escape and all this other stuff. So then Geordi's like, okay, I'm about to MacGyver this piece because that's what I do. So he gets in the computer and he's like, computer, help me do this, help me do that. Who designed this engine? We need to figure out different ways to make the engine work or work differently or more efficiently or pull power from somewhere else. And so he's interacting with the ship. And then he's like, actually, it'd be easier if I had somebody that represents the ship that I could kind of communicate with. So that's when they create Leah Brahms. But Leah Brahms is still very robotic and talks like the ship, but looks like beautiful Leah Brahms. And so then he's like, no, like give her personality and stuff. So I'm not talking to the computer. They, go through her conferences, check out her YouTube channel, get information about how she moves her hands and how she talks and how she tilts her head and put all that into this simulacrum so that I can actually interact with this program and solve this problem and, not die, save everyone on the Enterprise. So the computer's like, bet, I can do that. And then you see Leah Brahms go from this like robotic thing to being like, oh, hi, Geordi. And she's just this like lovely person who I don't know where the computer got this from because when we meet when we meet the real Leah Brahms in Galaxy's Child in like 2 seasons from now, she is not this at all. She's not this like little doll ball person, but whatever. Here she is. So she comes out and she's all like, let's figure this out together. And they work together and they save the ship. And for some strange reason, even though Riker's the best pilot in the entire Alpha Quadrant, Picard is the one who pilots the ship out of this minefield and back into safe space. And then they put like a buoy around and they're like, hey, don't fly in there because you'll die. And then they live happily ever after. And in the last scene, when Geordi's like, all right, I have to shut down the program, which he reluctantly does, but he remembers the lessons that he told Barclay from Holo Pursuits. Like, you gotta let it go. So when he goes to shut down the computer, the Leah Brahms hologram says something like, whenever you touch the engines, you're touching me, Geordi. And he's like, okay. And then they kiss. Weird. And then, I mean, but to be fair, they have had some incredible chemistry ever since she was like, life was breathed into her. They've had great chemistry. He was able to be himself. He was charming. He was funny. He was just regular. He wasn't trying as hard as he was in the beginning with that real life human woman with the Coco No-Nos. He was just being himself, and man, was a better look on him. Like, you could just see him being relaxed and him being, you know, really engaged in what they're doing and him just being himself. And so maybe that should have been the life lesson. But I don't think that was the lesson that he took. I don't think that's what he took away from this situation. Instead, when Galaxy's Child came along and Leah Brahms came to the ship, he was like, oh, I know her favorite dish because the hologram told me, you know, I know all this stuff about her. And so he tries to like lay it on pretty thick and to try to like romance her. And it goes horribly wrong. It's a disaster. And then eventually he confesses his undying love basically for her. And is like, I thought we could be friends, really good friends. And she's like, I don't know what the computer told you about me, but I guess it missed an important point that I'm married. And he's like, oh. I just thought, yeah, kind of like ChatGPT, you know, like you got to give it all the information. So there was some information missing. But in any case, this is how he was using the holodeck. He fell in love with the holographic Leah Brahms accidentally. So this wasn't like Barclay, who was creating this fantasy to get lost in. It wasn't like Riker, where the Bynars created the perfect woman to distract him. How did they even do that? How did they even know he would fall for that? I don't know. They're geniuses. In this case, Geordi did end up creating his perfect girlfriend, but accidentally. So I guess really who he was dating, because that's not like the real Leah Brahms at all, I think he was dating the ship. And maybe that's the life lesson. That Geordi's perfect woman is the Enterprise D. Chew on that. I'm going to check the chat, and then we will go on to episode number 4 on the list. OMG, that's it. The Trinars were with Locarno when they made the shield. Yeah, the Trinars were for sure in Lower Decks, but I just couldn't remember if we ever saw them at another time, because we also saw the Bynars. This is the creepiest episode of Star Trek ever. Geordi made Leah Brahms apologize to him when she found the program. Yeah, that scene. Where is it? Yes, Nadia, I am outraged. Yes, she had every reason to be outraged when she discovered this program, because of course she did. Because of course she did. Somehow she finds herself in the holodeck. I don't even know why she was there. Then she finds a program named after her. I don't know why she was looking for it. But she opens it up and she sees the last scene of the program going, when you touch the engines, Geordi, you're touching me. And then leaning over for a kiss. So she's like, what? I mean, she hits the roof. Totally reasonable. And then she confronts Geordi like, what the F is this? And Geordi's like, well, you were mean to me when you first came on the ship. And all I ever did was try to be nice to you. And she goes like, yeah, you're right. I was being really mean. Sorry, like whatever. And then he's like, okay. And that's when he says, I thought we could be friends, really good friends. And that's when she says, I'm married. Okay, but in that whole scene, there was no point where Geordi was like, you know what, you're right. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to create something that was, you know, a sex kitten, but that is what I did. I ended up doing that. And I did end up kissing her, and I did end up having feelings for her, and I totally was crushing on your simulacrum. And I get that that's super weird. I'm really sorry I did that. It is totally creepy. I overstepped my boundaries. Please forgive me. Of course you don't have to, because that's some creepy AF stuff. Where was that? Where was that line? Where was any of that? It was missing. She apologized. He did not. They worked together. They saved the day. The ship was saved from in Galaxy's Child, and also obviously in this episode. The ship was saved. And then Leah Brahms and Geordi like shake hands and just like part as friends. I guess I'm just going to have to assume in my headcanon that he apologized off screen. Because what the heck? No, we're not being friends. Apologize. And also delete that program. And also don't ever do that again. So those were the things that were missing. Her personality matrix really misled him. Seriously. Scott says, okay, but Geordi clearly made her an idealized version of Brahms. He didn't even know she was married when she came along in Galaxy's Child. Yeah, he asked the computer to like give her personality and blah, blah, blah. But the personality that the computer created from recordings of her conferences and stuff didn't match her actual personality. So I don't know how much of that. I don't know how much of Leah Brahms, the hologram, was Geordi's invention, like his intentional invention, and how much of it was the computer's extrapolation, or if the two just met in the merry middle to create Geordi's perfect person. He did spend 30 years rebuilding the D. So is that supposed to make it okay? Wait, what do you mean, Grace? Like, write that again. Makes sense that he likes Scotty so much. The original Enterprise was his true love. Yeah, so much. Nadia says, OMG, that podcast I listened to, Star Trek TNC, one of the hosts has a theory that Geordi is a mechanophile. He falls in love with machines. He has a totally platonic thing with Data. So, maybe. Yep, this episode was definitely pre-Me Too, right? Yes, right? He's got droid fever. You guys are so funny. Okay, let's go into episode number 4 on the list. Season 3, episode 14, Alter Ego. Harry falls for a holodeck character named Mariana, but things take a turn when she starts behaving like a real person. Turns out, she's actually an alien using the holodeck to interact with Voyager while she's isolated on her own station. Things take a turn after she falls in love with Tuvok and refuses to let the ship leave. So, this episode is really interesting. Like, I didn't think it was going to take this turn because it's so reminiscent of 1100101, right? Like, it's like someone created this holodeck program that seems so real because it is real, but there's some like nefarious purpose or some other purpose. So when I first watched this, I still remember when I first watched this episode and I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And I remember because every time I rewatch this episode, I'm still kind of like, what's going on? Like, why is this happening? This is so weird. So basically, Harry falls in love with a holodeck character. Of course he does. And he's really upset about it because he knows the hologram is fake and he doesn't want to like her, but he can't help it. So he turns to Tuvok for help. Why Tuvok? I don't know. But he's like, Tuvok, you've got to help me. So Tuvok's like, okay, fine. And he's like, Tuvok, I swear, she's not like your average. I think they were playing Calto and he brought it up. I don't know. But anyways, he's like, she's not your average hologram. She really seems like real, like for real. And Tuvok's like, yeah, it's probably just in your head, dude. But fine, I'll go to the holodeck and like meet this person. So they go to Neelix's program, which is that like cool tiki bar. And this woman, Mariana, immediately falls for Tuvok. And it just finds him so fascinating and intellectually stimulating and all these things. And so she's inviting him to like spend time with her in the holodeck and all of this. And so Harry is like, what the F, dude? Like, you knew I liked her and you totally stole my girl. And Tuvok's like, no, I'm married. Hello. And Harry's like, does she know that? Because you guys are spending all this time together. And he's super jealous. Understandable. Poor Harry. I have all the empathy and sympathy for Harry Kim in this episode, but also a lot for Mariana because turns out she is real, and that's why the holodeck program was so real. She has been on this space station. I forget for how many years. I want to say like 10 years or something. Remind me if somebody in the chat probably remembers. But she's been on this space station doing whatever she's supposed to do for her people for like years and years and years. And it's this weird part of space where there's like all these space fibers. And she's in control of the fibers to like keep them smooth and consistent. I don't know. So that people can travel in and out. I forget her total job, but whatever. She's been doing this for a long time and she's really lonely. So when the Enterprise came along and she discovered this holodeck and that she could kind of plug her consciousness into it, she was like, oh, this is fun. And she was interacting with the crew and hanging out. And then she was kind of dating Harry and just kind of enjoying herself. And then she met Tuvok and she was like, oh, this is my person. And that's when things took a turn, because she was like, I don't want the ship to leave. I want you guys to stay. So she holds this ship. She holds Voyager hostage. And she's like, I will not let you go unless you give me Tuvok. If Tuvok comes to the station and stays with me forever, then I will happily let Voyager go. And Janeway's like, you must be out of your ever-loving mind. I do not negotiate with terrorists. But Tuvok does go over there and has a conversation with her and basically is like, I'm flattered. I'm flattered that you think I'm awesome. I'm also married. And while you think that's not a big deal, because I probably won't get home for 70 years, Vulcans live a long time. Okay, we live a long AF time. So 70 years is no sweat. Couple of Ponfars, a couple of sweat. But after that, no sweat. No problem. I'm going to head home. I'm going to be back with my wife. This is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to stay here with you. Period. The end. In addition, I think you need to leave the station. You've been here for too many years. You need to go back with your people. You need to be with people. And she does manage to see sense. She eventually goes like, all right, fine. Like, I really liked you. I really want you to stay. But kidnapping is probably not the answer to my loneliness. So, okay. So in the end, she lets them go, and she lets him go. And presumably she contacts her people and says, hey, I need a sub. You know, like, I'm out. Like, I think I've done enough years. I need to go home now and be with other people. So, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting episode. I think it's not as good as the Binar episode because the Binars are so interesting. And we only know very little about Mariana's species. And really, it's more about the Tuvok and her tension, and then the Harry and Tuvok frenemy ship that's kind of built in this episode. So I feel like it's not as meaty as the Binar episode. But also, this romance is not as cringy as the Minuet thing. So do they balance? I don't know. What do you think? You can check the chat, and then we will go to the 5th episode out of 6 on the list. Yes. Okay. So Windgrace, thank you for clarifying. I said Geordi's perfect woman is the Enterprise D. His perfect partner is the Enterprise D. And Windgrace, you said he did spend 30 years putting her back together. So that sounds like they had a long and healthy relationship going. Nadia says, exactly, which is why I brought up the mechanophile theory. Like, that's exactly why. He's really into mechanics. Scott says, when I summarized this one, I called Harry's feelings for the hologram Riker-LaForge syndrome. That just gives me so much joy. The Riker-LaForge syndrome. Poor Harry. Aliens, holograms, 7 of 9. And then when he finds a girl, Janeway yells at him, and he gets a space STD. It's like, this kid just can't win. We're always like talking about how he never gets promoted, but he also is just so unlucky in love, which is such a bummer. Yeah, the wrong Delaney twin, exactly. Or the girl who sabotaged the space race. Oh yeah, that girl who we thought was like, Harry was going to really like find somebody. He's really excited about this girl, and they're going to be in the race together, and she turns out to be a terrorist. Of course she does. And he gets to sit back and watch Tom get engaged while he's like dating a terrorist. And then there was the girl who was dead. Do you remember that girl that he was in love with, and she died and then came back as another alien, and then she had to leave with her new alien family? She was keeping a nebula together or something because it was supposed to have disappeared or whatever years ago. Yes, that's true, Nadia. 70 years is 10 Ponfars. He's going to need to be in that holodeck. All right, let's move on to episode 5 on the list. Season 6, episode 11, Fairhaven. While Voyager rides out a 3-day neutrino storm, the crew enjoys the holographic village of Fairhaven. Captain Janeway meets a charming barkeeper named Michael Sullivan, and before you know it, she's modifying him to create the perfect boyfriend. At first, she enjoys his company, but soon she realizes that it's all a fantasy that should be avoided and not indulged in. Both Chakotay and the doctor advise her to just let herself be happy for once. So in general, I don't always love Tom's holodeck programs, specifically Sandrine's. I didn't like that place. It was just creepy to me. It was very dark, and it was very just kind of like a little sleazy. And maybe it's because the first time we see the Sandrines, Tom, like I think it was Sandrine, the woman who owned the bar, like comes up and makes out with him, and then like another girl comes up and makes out with him, and he's just like, ugh. this is my favorite place. And he brings Harry, very similar to what Riker did with Picard and Minuet, and was like, you got to check out this bar. It's so great. All the chicks dig me there. It was kind of like that's how Tom introduced Sandrines, and that just left a bad taste in my mouth. And every time they went back to Sandrines, I was like, no, thank you. But Fairhaven, I love Fairhaven. It's so, I don't know, it's just adorable. It's just really adorable. It's very quaint and simple. It's not dark and sleazy. You know, it's like the opposite of Sandrines. So I actually really like Fairhaven. And I really like this episode. It's so simple, but also it has something that I think is really important, which is a topic about Janeway and her happiness. And in preparing this conversation today, I was like, you know, pulling clips or whatever and seeing which clips I want to use. And I literally wanted to just sit and watch the whole episode. I didn't have time for that, but I wanted to just sit and just watch the whole episode because I really like this one. I think the relationship between Janeway and Michael is really sweet. Actually, let me take a step back. So when Janeway comes into the program, she meets the barkeep, Michael. His name's Michael, right? I don't have my notes. So hopefully that's what the video said, because I also can't hear the videos or myself. So let me know if that's not his name, but I think it was Michael. And she meets him in the bar, and they have this great conversation. They have all this chemistry. They hit it off. They play all these games like darts and, I don't know, arm wrestling and just all kinds of stuff. And it's so fun and it's so cute. And it's so natural and easy. And it's just nice to see Janeway just kind of like flirt and laugh and smile and have a good time. They end up spending the entire night just hanging out. And then early in the morning, like the holographic morning, so what does that even mean on the ship? Nothing, I guess. But early in the holographic morning, his wife comes in and is just like, oh, that's where you are. I was wondering where you were because you weren't home all night. Ha ha ha. And Janeway's like, oh, you have a wife. How lovely. So nice to meet you. And then she leaves and she's just like, nah, that's not gonna work. So then she goes into the computer, into the holodeck program, and she starts making all these modifications to his program specifically. She's like, I want him a little bit taller. I want him to have more stubble on his face. No, less stubble on his face. No, a little more stubble on his face. You know, I want him to be more intellectual. I want him to be like read and love books and poetry. I want him to like to travel and explore things. Like, she's changing all kinds of things about his personality. And the very last like perfect thing she changes is she goes, oh, and computer, delete the wife. And it's like one of my favorite Janeway-isms of all the Janeway-isms. Like, a lot of people quote, there's coffee in that nebula, but this is probably my favorite one, is delete the wife. And so she just makes him her perfect person. Then when she goes back into the holodeck, that's the scene that I just showed in that clip, where he's not in the bar that he owns and should probably be working at. Instead, he's sitting out by the train station reading poetry. So she comes along and he's like, have you read this? And have you read that? And he's just so charming and smart and all these things and cultured. And so she's just having the time of her life. During all of this, there's a 3-day storm going on. So they know they can't outrun the storm because the space storm takes up too much space. So they can't get out of its way. They can't go through it faster. So they've decided to just stay put and literally ride out the storm. It's going to take 3 days. So Neelix was like, can we just keep Fairhaven open for 3 straight days so that people can go in there and relax, because there's like not much anybody else can do. And Janeway was like, cool. So when she goes in and she makes all those changes, she's like, this is going to be the best 3 days of my life. So she spends her whole 3 days in there, just like almost everybody on the ship. And at one point, she's like out on a date with Michael. Please tell me his name really is Michael. Okay, no one corrected me, so I guess so. She's on a date with him, and Chakotay comes by and is like, oh, Captain, nice to see you. And she's like, hey, how's it going? And she's like so embarrassed that she got caught on a date. She's so embarrassed, which is funny because Tom is not embarrassed at all. Tom was like, let me show you who I'm hooking up with in Fairhaven. You know, Tom is doing his thing, but Janeway is just like so embarrassed. And Chakotay tells her later, like, you seemed a little embarrassed when I saw you. There's no reason to be. This is a holodeck. Like, have fun. Like, enjoy, you know? Everyone else is. Let your hair down. Enjoy. Which she did, now that I think about it, literally let her hair down. And she was really embarrassed. But she pushed through and kept, like, dating and enjoying her time. And then at one point she realizes that all of this is fake and she needs to stop. There's a scene where she like makes out with him and she's like, finally, I don't know, it's really cute. And then she's like, you know, finally you and I can be together and just whatever. But then after they make out, she's just like, wait, all of this is fake and I have generated this. Like, I can't do this anymore. So all of the books that she had replicated that Michael had recommended, she was reading the poetry in all of these old books because she, you know, so they could have something to talk about. She took all of the books, the stack of books, and just put them in the recycler. She was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done with this. I'm moving on. I'm turning my heart off. I don't care. Then Michael realizes that she's gone and is not coming back for some reason and loses his crap. Like, he starts drinking. He starts a bar fight. A whole bunch of people get injured. He climbs up a tree and is screaming, Katie O'Clair! Katie O'Clair, where are you? Like, he's lost his ever-loving mind. So Janeway finds this out because she walks into the sickbay for some reason. She's just hanging out and walks in the sickbay, and she sees like Neelix has got his arm in a sling, and you know, like Harry's got like a black eye, and Tom's got like a busted lip, and you know, Janeway's like, what happened here? And Harry's about to spill the beans, and then the doctor is like, may I talk to you, Captain? And they go for this walk, this really long, awkward walk. So I highly recommend, if you haven't seen this episode recently, watch it again, because just for this scene, because it's hilarious. They have to, because of the set, they only have so many hallways. So they had to keep walking around the hallways over and over and over and over. But they kept changing the camera angles to make it seem like it's different hallways. And I just enjoyed that. But anyways, they go on this long walk, and the doctor's talking to her and is just like, why did you break his heart? You know? And she's like, he's a hologram. He'll get over it, whatever. And then he's like, okay, fine. Yeah, you can change the program and he'll get over it. But what about you? Like, you probably have feelings too that were hurt. And she's like, I'm so embarrassed to say that I have feelings for a hologram. Like, that is just so embarrassing. And the doctor's like, why? Why is that a problem? You're the captain of this ship. Everybody here is your subordinate. So if you're not going to feel comfortable dating anyone on the ship, where does that leave you? Are you just going to hook up with random aliens as we're going home? We're going to be on the ship for 70 years. That is not the plan. Maybe a holodeck romance is the best thing for you. It's something that can give you that kind of companionship you're looking for without compromising anything on the ship and without having to depend on the kindness of strangers when we happen upon an alien ship that seems friendly, you know? And Janeway's just like, but it's not real. It's all fake. And the speech is so good. I wish I could remember it like verbatim, but the doctor basically is like, well, your feelings are real and that's what makes it real. It doesn't matter if it's photons or flesh and blood. Your feelings are real and your experiences are real. And he said, like, if he makes a joke and you laugh, is that real? Or is that a fake laugh? You know, is that fake? Is the laughter not really real? Like, of course it is. So he's like, it doesn't matter. And so she's like, well, I don't know. And then he's like, how about this? My recommendation, because she mentioned, like, he was snoring. They were on a date and he fell asleep, like, on her lap, and he started to snore. And she was just about to open the computer program to change that about him so he couldn't snore. And then that's when she realized this is all fake, and that's when she left. So he basically woke up at the end of this date, and she was nowhere to be found. And that's why he started binge drinking and bar fighting and all of that, because he's like, everything was great. We were having a great time. We were hooking up. I mean, not hooking up. We were having a good time. We were on a date, and I woke up and she was gone. So that's why he's kind of like, what the heck? I guess she broke up with me? I don't know. She just disappeared on me, right? So that's why he was so upset. Anyways, she was just like, this is all manufactured and it's not real. And the doctor was like, how about this? Next time he snores, just let him snore. How about that? How about you stop changing his program? Like, you have changed it. Fine. That's done now. Just like, don't change it anymore. So, okay, then that storm I was talking about before is still raging, and something happens where the storm intensifies suddenly because reasons. And Fairhaven is like devastated. Like, it is just destroyed because the program was running during the storm. And Tom and Harry are going to rebuild it, but from what they currently have, Harry estimates they can only save about 10% of what's in the program. So Harry's like, what do you think, Tom? What 10% should we save? Everything else will have to be rebuilt from the ground up, but what should we save? And Tom goes, I think I need to talk to someone first who might have a few ideas before we do anything. So he goes to the captain and says, hey, we can only save a little bit of the program. Do you have any ideas about what we should save? Basically giving her the option, like, we can make sure that Michael is spared is one of the 10%, like, for you. Which I love that too. It's like Harry, Tom, all of them, they care about the captain. They care about her happiness, and they don't want to step on her toes. They don't want to pry. They don't want to, you know, make her feel some sort of way, but they want her to be happy. So I love the way that Tom approached this and was just like, do you have any ideas about what programs we should save? Instead of being like, you want me to save your boyfriend, or making her feel weird about it. I don't know. I just thought it was really, yeah, I agree, Nadia. It was like really sweet. And we don't see her answer in that moment. What we see her do is go to the holodeck to talk to Michael. And she is like chit-chatting, and then she goes like, yeah, I do want to save this program. So then she's like, computer save program. And her very last thing is, and block all access for me to be able to ever change this program again. So she takes the doctor's advice and is no longer going to tinker with him and just let him be how he is. And then she has to take the risk of being in a relationship where she doesn't know what's going to happen because she cannot program and control it, which I love. I really like this episode. It's just sweet. I don't know. It's sweet. Too big. Yes, Lindsay Ballard. Where was I? Hold on. I need to do a video on Harry. Didn't I do a video on Harry? I did a video on Harry. I did a video on the best Harry Kim episodes. I did that. Gasp, she deletes the wife. Forget Tuvix, what about the wife? Missed opportunity for the holodeck malfunction a season later where Janeway is in her gothic program and she is being hunted by the fragmented holodeck ghost of the wife. Oh my gosh, that would actually... I wouldn't remember that though. I wouldn't remember that. Like, I know the scene you're talking about with those creepy, weird holodeck programs that Janeway's always running. And she was being haunted by that lady who would like try to stab her or whatever. But if they did something like that where they had, you know, some holodeck malfunction and it was the wife who came back to get her, I would not put together that was the wife from Fairhaven. Like, she wasn't memorable enough, but that would have been pretty funny. If Fairhaven found out their holograms, would it all go topsy-turvy? Great question, Randall. And that question is answered in Spirit Folk. That episode comes, I want to say like 3 or 4 episodes later, where Fairhaven has been running at this point for like a month straight or some silliness. I don't remember why it was running for so long, but it was running for so long that it started to glitch. And then the holodeck characters started to become aware of the crew beaming in and out. And so then they thought the whole crew were demons and all of this stuff. Michael still loved Janeway though, even though she wasn't really who she said she was. Another one for Harry. Poor Maggie O'Halloran turned into a cow. Yes, that's true. Harry had a crush on one of the girls in Fairhaven, and she turned into a cow. That is true. The Red Hour Festival. Oh gosh, not that again. Peace and tranquility. Yeah, I thought Tom was sweet as well. And then he came back in lower decks just to do nothing but say, I miss my wife. So imagine if Michael comes back and is just like, and he's a heavy drinker now, right? Like, he is a heavy drinker. The bar's gone under because he drank all his product. And he's just like, Katie O'Clair left me heartbroken. And I can't find me wife. Like, and that's just like a thing that his character has just like been brought to the bottom. That would be really sad and really funny. Okay, let's talk about the last episode on the list, which I also actually do like. Season 2, Episode 19, Lifesigns. Voyager receives a distress signal from a dying Vidian physician named Dinara Pell. The doctor transfers her consciousness into a healthy holographic body while also begging B'Elanna to help him save her life. At first, Pell works tirelessly with the doctor to restore her body, but after falling in love with him, she sabotages their efforts so that she can be remembered as healthy and beautiful. I really like this episode. I think it's really sweet. I sort of forgot about it until I was preparing for this conversation, and then I was like, oh yeah, we got to do that episode because it's so early on in Voyager. I think it was season 2 or whatever the video just said. But this was similar to that last episode where as I was figuring out which clips to pull, I just wanted to watch the whole episode. Like, I just wanted to watch it again. So a couple of things that are really sweet about this episode is seeing the doctor fall in love for the first time is really sweet. Seeing this Vidian woman fall in love, presumably also for the first time, is really sweet. Having Kes be like the counselor on romance is really cute and really sweet. And just seeing the friendship between her and the doctor is really sweet. So basically in this episode, they come across this Vidian, they get a distress call from a Vidian ship, and they find this woman who's dying. But this woman she is a Vidian scientist, she's a physician, and she has this like neural interface, so it's already backing up her consciousness or her mind or something in the little thing she's got hooked up to her anyways. So they immobilize her body, and she's like at death's door, and they pause the death somehow, and the doctor works to transfer her consciousness into a holographic simulacrum and uses the computer's scans of her body and whatever to create a healthy version of her. So this is exactly what her face would look like if she didn't have pieces stolen from all these other dead people strapped to her face. This is what she would look like if she had healthy skin and, you know, healthy hairline and all these things. So this is a face she has never seen. And when she wakes up, she's like, what's going on? Like, what is this? And the doctor's like, oh, you're a hologram just like me, and your body's over here, and I've transferred your consciousness so that you can help me to save your life. Now, the doctor goes to B'Elanna to say, I need some of your brain tissue to like, graft onto her brain tissue to stabilize her brain because the phage is like just is eating away at that part. And we already discovered that Klingon DNA is resistant to the phage. So B'Elanna's like, F that, because there was that episode. What was the name of the episode? I always want to call it Face Off. That's not the episode. Maybe it's called, I don't remember. It'll come to me. But there was the episode where the Vidians kidnapped B'Elanna and they separated her into her two component parts. So there was a human B'Elanna and a Klingon B'Elanna. And they were just like fussing and fighting the whole time. It wasn't the best episode. But, you know, it was nice to get some like internal perspectives of B'Elanna's life. But like the way they did it, it wasn't the best episode in the world, but it was interesting. You know, it was an interesting take. Faces. Oh, it was called Faces. Well, I always want to call it Face Off because like the faces. Okay, Faces. Thanks, Scott. So anyways, they know B'Elanna's blood is resistant to the phage, so presumably every part of her is. So he wants to take some of her brain tissue, and she's like, no, F that, F them. I hate Vidians, and I'm not doing anything to help them. But then she has a conversation with the hologram of Dinara Pell, and Pell is like so nice. And so she's like, fine, I'll change. So she does the procedure. They take some of her brain tissue. They graft it onto they graft it onto the Vidian body. The healing is working well. They come up with some new procedures together. All the while, the doctor's falling in love with Pell, and Pell's falling in love with him, and he does not know. So there's a scene where he's like working on whatever, and Kes comes in and is like, oh, you know, is there anything you need, or whatever she says. And then he's like, I'm running a diagnostic on my program. And she's like, why? Is there something wrong with your program? And he's like, yes. And I don't know why, but like, I'm so distracted and all this stuff. And she's like, how long has this been going on? And he says like a couple of days. And she's like, oh, since Pell has been here, since Dinara has been here. And he's like, yeah, what's that have to do with anything? And she's like, maybe you're attracted to her. Maybe there's nothing wrong with your program. Maybe you just like her. And he's like, that's impossible. My program I'm not programmed to be attracted to anyone. That's not even a thing. And then she says, isn't your program adaptive? And he's like, yes. And she says, I think it's adapting. Like, you like her. And he's like, well, how do I unlike her? And she's like, it doesn't work like that, doctor. That's not how this works. You have to experience the things, but they're fun things. They're good things to feel, like, enjoy it. So this is really cute. They sit down on the counter and they just chat. Like, they just sit and just talk. And it's just the cutest little scene. And the doctor's just like, but all I can do is like think about her. I can't stop thinking about her. And then when she's around, I feel really stupid. I don't know what to say. And then when she's not around, you know, like, what do I do? And so Kes gives him a little bit of advice. And it's like, just tell her how you feel, doctor. So he's like, okay, all right, I'm going to do that. So then later on, they're doing the next layer of their procedures on Pell's body. And so she's there, and then Kes is there assisting or whatever. And as he's doing whatever scans, he's like, would you like to go out with me? Or something like that. Like, he just blurts it out. And she's like, what? And Kes is just like, oh my gosh. But you got to remember, he has no experience. So you told him to tell her how he feels. But maybe he needed more direction. Maybe he needed a little more specific advice. I don't know. Because he was just like, he just blurted out at the weirdest time. And so she's kind of panicked. And she's like, I think we should just stay professional. And so he's like, yes, I understand. And then leaves. Like, he just like walks out and he goes to the holodeck and just is like drowning his sorrows in Sandrines. Oh, Sandrines. And she's like, now she's really sad too, because she's like, why has he been gone so far? And like, why isn't he hanging out with us and all this stuff? And then Kes is like, wait a minute, do you like him? Like, you really like him, don't you? And she's like, yeah, I really have a crush on him. And Kes is like, what? Why didn't you say anything? Like, when he asked you out, or when he told you how he felt, why didn't you say you felt the same? And she was like, I don't know. I panicked. He just blurted it out and I didn't know what to say. And so I just said whatever came into my head. And so it's like the two of them are on the same page with like just this total awkwardness of, I've never been in love before and I don't know what to say and how to behave. And also Dinara was like, how could he love me? How is that even possible? Look at me over there. I'm hideous. You know, like, how could he love me? And Kes is like, because you're kind and you're generous and you're intelligent and you're this and you're that. Should I go on? And she's like, no, please don't. And Kes says, you know, one thing you're not good at though? Taking compliments. Like, you're not good at that. Next time somebody gives you a compliment, just take them at their word, you know? And she's like, okay, I don't know. So then we go to the Sandrines where the doctor is like pouring out all of this concern to Tom. And Tom is like, maybe she's just shy. And I think you scared her away because you were a little too aggressive. That was not the right approach. And then the doctor goes, oh, what is the right approach? Like, I don't know. So then the next scene, it's like, it's like EMH personal log inaugural entry. This is when the Doctor starts his log. He has apparently not had a log before this moment, and he starts a log just to talk about a girl he has a crush on. How cute is that? So they end up going to one of Tom's programs where it's a view of Mars. They're on Mars. They're on some like cliff top looking down at some, I wanted to say like a space station, but like some colony or something. And they're sitting in this old car, and it's just, I don't know, and you see the Doctor like waiting for Dinara to show up, and then she like beams into the holodeck program, and he's like, I didn't know you were gonna come. She's like, I didn't know either. And so they have like a first date. He brings her flowers, chocolates, and a teddy bear, and he just like gives them all to her at once. He's like, take this, here you go. And she's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, this is so sweet. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just awkward, but it's cute, it's sweet, it's just kind of lovely. And they share their first kiss. They go dancing at the Sandrines. They just have like the best time. So later on, when they're like at the end of the process of fixing Dinara's body, something goes terribly wrong, and there's some kind of chemical that's been introduced into her system, and she's dying, like the body is dying. And if the body dies, the mind will also die, because there is a neural interface on the body that's projecting into the holographic her. So if the body dies, she will die too. And the Doctor immediately blames Kes. Why Kes? But I guess because she was the only other person in the room, and is like, I'm gonna get Tuvok down here. You tried to kill her. You're trying to kill her. You're attempting murder. And Kes is like, what the F? What did I do? And then Dinara is like, no, calm down. It was me. I attempted murder on myself. And the Doctor is like, why would you do that? And she's just like, I've had so much fun. I didn't have to worry about parts of my body just falling off. And we've got to go on dates. And this is the life I really want. And I kind of want this or nothing. And I know I can't have this forever. And I'm not ready to go back to my body. So I'm just done. Like, let's just let it end like this. Beautiful, sweet, with these memories. And that's it. And the Doctor's like, I don't care about your appearance. It's all the rest of you that I'm in love with. And you have to live on. Somehow he convinces her. I don't know how, but he convinces her. So whatever chemical she injected her body with, they were able to undo and transfer her consciousness back. And then the last scene is them in Sandrines, where she shows up as her Vidian self, like her actual body. She shows up, and they share one last dance together. And that's actually not it. We do see her again. What is the name of that episode? Oh, I think it's in the episode. Is it in Deadlock? We see her. No. Is it in the episode where they like duplicate the ship? Maybe. I don't know. But in some other episode, we see her again, and they're like talking on the comms, and it's really sweet and cute again. So yes. I don't know. I'm going to check the chat. I'm like, is there anything else I want to say about that episode? I just think it's really sweet. It's really cute. I love seeing the Doctor being in love for the first time. It kind of takes, it cuts the like abrasiveness that he sometimes has, and it's just really sweet. Okay. Yes, Shmullis. Exactly. She named him Shmullis after her father or grandfather. I think father. I think after her father. So that's why when we had the Star Trek trivia night a couple of weeks ago, I was like, this is a trick question when you say, what's the Doctor's name? Because this was one of his, I guess, nicknames, pet names, was Shmullis. And she definitely called him that, like, in the second, whenever she shows up again in the next episode. She's like, Shmullis, I have an emergency message for you or whatever. So, like, that's their little secret name together, which I think is really cute. Randall says, maybe there was a ghost in that room Janeway was not to go into. That room with the ghost with the knife, is that the episode you're talking about? Or are you talking about this? I'm honestly pretty surprised Bashir didn't have an unhealthy thing with a hologram. I don't think Bashir needed a hologram. Bashir was the Riker and the Kirk of DS9, right? He was like the hot stuff, because we got to have that character, apparently. So Bashir was the Riker, and but Riker had a thing with a hologram, so I guess so. I guess that's true. Yeah, it is kind of weird now that you mention it. It is kind of weird. Gavin says, I like this one. The Doctor's date when he just piles the presents on her awkwardly was so cute. Never trust questionable forehead Jason Alexander. True. That's one of my favorite episodes. Think Tank in Voyager. I love that episode so much. I think the episode where the Doctor falls for Seven and they sing You Are My Sunshine should have been an honorable mention. So sweet. Oh, yeah. But no one falls in love with the hologram in that episode. What was that episode? That was, I want to say Equinox, but it was not Equinox. It was Equinox, right? When the Equinox kidnapped the Doctor and was making him do stuff to Seven of Nine to unlock the codes of something or whatever. And then in the end, or correct me if I'm wrong, maybe that wasn't the episode, but in the end, the Doctor feels so bad about like mutilating Seven when he was under the control of someone else. And then 7 of 9 is like, why don't we just work on your security like protocols so that people can't hack you? You know, she was like, I have nothing against you. You were hacked. Let's just fix that so you don't get hacked again. And he's like, oh, okay. But yeah, maybe instead of I'm in love with a hologram, it's a hologram's in love with me. Because he definitely had a thing for Seven. Do you remember that episode when he confesses? What was the episode? Was it Dr. Tinker Tenor Spy, or was it Renaissance Man? It was Renaissance Man when he took over all of the crew members to try to save the crew / strand the crew and steal the warp core. And at the end, his matrix was like falling apart and he thought he was going to be destroyed. And B'Elanna was trying to save him. And he was in the holodeck, like confessing all of his sins. And his last thing was to tell Seven that he loved her. And he's like, I could never tell you before, but I love you. And then he disappears. And Janeway's like, B'Elanna, is he gone? And she's like, he's fine. And then he reappears immediately. And they're like, you're fine. And he's just like so humiliated. That's another one. That's another episode I really enjoy. Let's see. Thank God nobody ever fell in love with Flaughter. So human, all the feels. I agree, Jonathan G. It's just really sweet. One thing I remembered, honorable mention for this topic, should go to real life, except I just remembered the ending and made myself sad. Yeah, I guess that is true. That's true. So this whole thing is I'm in love with a hologram. The episode Real Life is the episode where the Doctor makes a holographic family and then his holographic daughter dies in the end, which is like so heartbreaking. Especially she dies from an injury. It has like very much vibes of Offspring from TNG and of Data trying to save Lal and then having that final conversation with Lal before she shuts down. It's very much like that, where she has this medical injury. Him being a doctor, he tried to save her life, but the way the program was set to be randomized, he can't save her life, and they have one final conversation before she dies, like holding hands, and man, that hits me every time. Like every time I lose it. Resolutions. Oh, why was the Doctor doing that? In Resolutions, was that the one when Seska kidnaps, like, or takes over the crew, hijacks the ship, and then puts the crew out on some M-class planet? Remind me what Resolutions was. She sends the Doc the antivirus that saves Chakotay. Oh, Resolutions. Was that the one when Chakotay and Janeway were stuck on the planet? Was that called Resolutions? Okay, so that's when Dinara Pell sends Shmullis the secret code so that they can get the cure so they can save them. Okay. I did not remember. I could not place where that happened. Thank you for that. Someone to Watch Over Me. That's the episode. I don't remember that episode. They sang Oh My Darling. I don't remember what happens in that episode. Or Body and Soul, where the Doctor possesses Seven and then gets busy with the cheesecake. It definitely wasn't Body and Soul. I remember that one. Resolutions was a stranded planet. Someone to Watch Over Me was, I don't know. The name sounds familiar. I can't put a picture in my mind with the episode. Okay, so that was my list of 6 times that people / holograms have fallen in love with holograms. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining me. For those of you joining me live, thank you so much for those of you who are still watching on the replay. Join me next week when I'll be talking about something. I don't know what that thing's going to be. Also, this is Thanksgiving Eve here in the United States, like during the time of this recording. So I just want to say I'm so thankful for you. If you're still watching this, if you're hearing my voice, I am so thankful for you. You are a part of what brings me so much joy and so much life. And so I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I am grateful for you. I'm grateful for you being here. If you're watching on your phone or if you're watching on the TV and you can't comment in the chat, no worries. I'm still grateful for you. Thank you for being here. And that's it for me. And I will see you next week. 7 was practicing dating in the hologram in that one. Oh, Someone to Watch Over Me. Is that the one where like her implant spazzes out because she has too much joy? Okay, because I do remember that one. That was like way in season 7, and then she like falls in love with Chakotay from that holodeck program. Okay, that makes sense. All right, technology.